Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World, and I'm delighted to be joined by a good old friend of mine from BBC Radio Derby, Mr. Ed Dawes. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, thank you. It's been a tiring few days, but I feel a little bit more human today.
Yeah, just recovering a little bit now, aren't you? That's the thing. Is the celebrations and the emotion take over for it. You've got to recover.
Yeah, they do, and it's been a long time coming, but I'm just happy that we've now got 3.5 months before the new season starts, so we can just sort of just take a step back, take it all in.
Yeah, you got to breathe a little bit, mate, then just see what's going on, which kind of takes us on nicely to one of the things which I wanted to discuss with you, which is obviously Ebou Adams, who's on loan from Cardiff. So if we start with him, because obviously I spoke to you in January, I think either the day after or the day that he had come to you. And I think I said, I think it was a really clever signing, and I thought he would do very well. From what I can gather, and what I've little bits I've seen, I would be lying if I've said I've seen loads, but I have seen a little bit, and he seems to have done very well. He seems to be very popular down your parts, but you would know more than me, so fill us in on how he's been.
Well, you were bang on when you said he'd do very well. He has done very well, although I'm going to come on here and make sure that I say, nah, he's not going to cut it in the Championship. You should just get rid of him because he's done really, really well for Derby. And you can safely say that he was a missing piece of that jigsaw that Paul Warne needed. Somebody in midfield who was going to just smash a few, break up the play, distribute the ball, enthusiasm. And he scored a great goal against Blackpool on Good Friday, and he's just played with a smile on his face, and he really has just taken Derby to his heart, and Derby have taken him to his heart. I don't think Derby would have gotten to the second place and stayed there like they did if they hadn't had that kind of player in midfield. I think it would have been the playoffs, but he certainly, from the games that he played, 17 matches he played, he scored 1 goal, he got 1 assist, and he's been brilliant, really, really good.
Yeah, it's an interesting one now because Cardiff will want to push on next year, and in the summer, it looks like the manager's staying, which has been a big sort of conversation. Is he going to sign a new contract? Is he not? But I think it looks like he's staying. If he's staying, he's probably been told that he's going to have a little bit of back in to some degree. But Cardiff are very, very short of money, so they will have to fund it with player sales. Perry NG, I expect, will probably be the big one to go because he'll get the most money. But I also think that, I'm not sure, because I think I said to you in January about Ebou Adams, as I said, he hasn't had much of a chance at Cardiff, and in some ways, I could see him going on loan to you guys, having a really good period, and coming back and playing. But the problem he's got is in that sort of defensive midfield role. We've got Siopis, another, an international footballer, and he's very, very good. He's actually in a side which needs a lot of signings. That's one position where we're quite solid. We've got a couple of youngsters there as well. So I do think, and it's only an opinion, but I do think we probably will look to sell Ebou Adams. But then again, will the manager want to have a look and assess what he's done at Derby? It's a difficult one. Do you think Derby, if there is a sale to be made, do you think Derby will want to keep him?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They've already said that they will be looking to open talks with Cardiff about Ebou Adams this summer. Ebou's been really coy about it, actually, because we did a behind the scenes at the training ground at Moor Farm about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he sat down with me. I presented the afternoon show, and he sat down with me for 25 minutes. And we talked about football. We talked about life. We talked about Ramadan, which is what he was going through at the time as well. And he's so humble. I mean, his faith is massive. You can tell that his faith is massive. He's very much a follower of his faith, and that molds him as a person, but also as a footballer. And I think the way he talked about how much the club had done for him in sorting out this move to Derby. Derby, I'm talking about, not Cardiff, but they sorted him a house to live in with his wife and child, who was newborn as well. So he's having to go through all of that as well. So he gave me the impression he was pretty settled. On Saturday, I mean, they've been singing "Sign Him Up" for weeks now. On Saturday, there are pictures on social media. When the crowd invaded the pitch, someone gave him a Gambian flag, and he's on. There's a great picture. It's like "Where's Wally?" He sat on shoulders right in the middle of thousands of people, massive grin on his face, swinging his Gambian flag. Really, really looked totally at home. But he says it's not up to him, and it isn't, of course. But Derby have said that they do want to sign him, but they won't pay over the odds because it's not old Derby. Derby are very much on a budget, and therefore they're not going to pay over the odds and sort of break the bank for one player. I don't know what kind of fee Cardiff would want for him, but you kind of hope that for all sides, he's found a little place that's dear to his heart and feels like he can progress. And if he's not in Cardiff's plans, then get the deal done early.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think part of backing the manager from a Cardiff point of view is not just getting players in, it's getting players out who he doesn't see as part of his project. And ultimately, the fact that he let him go in January probably means that for whatever reason, he's not part of the project. Or he's not part of what the manager sees the project to be. So I think you'd like to think that if that's the case, he likes Derby, Cardiff are looking to get some sort of money in. Maybe they can work something out. Cardiff are also notoriously bad at selling, mate. So we'll probably end up giving him to you for free or something.
I'll do. Derby have money, so why not?
I think he's only got a year left on his contract anyway.
Yeah,
so I think it's not like he's got sort of 3 years and whatnot. So I think I'd be very surprised if that move doesn't happen. Just from all points of view, it seems to make a lot of sense. Do you think
there's an article on the BBC website today actually that it's all quotes out of his interview from after the game against Carlisle on Saturday, talking about his time at Derby and sort of whether he wants to stay or not. I tweeted that from our business account, BBC account, saying, would he be the first signing on your list to get done? Derby fans, they all came back saying, no brainer. Is this a serious question? Blah, blah, blah. And then some people said, sign him, build the team around him. So, I mean, League One and the Championship is a step up. It's quicker, it's slicker. You've got a lot of athletes. The football is better. It's whether he can adapt to that.
But then I do think if you look at the better teams in the Championship in terms of football played, whether it's a Leeds or a Leicester or, Cardiff have played some good possession football at times. Like whatever the team is, all of those teams have got a really good holding midfielder. And I think if you can get that type of player, because there's not loads of them where they're out and out able to be a bit of a destroyer, but I don't think he's terrible on the ball either. He's not someone who needs to win the ball and get rid of it immediately as quick as possible because in case he loses it. Like he's generally pretty good, and I think I said that on the show which I did with you in January. I think I said like people think he's just this, and he is that, but he's also a bit more capable than people give him credit for, and he can also slot in into defence and some other bit. I think you need players like that, and I think it remains to be seen, I guess, if he can continue the same sort of form in the Championship, because it is different. But I also think that you can't judge him on his time at Cardiff because he barely played. So that all you can judge him on is when he's played week in, week out. And yes, League One, it gets quicker, like you say, and everything once it goes up to the Championship. But I don't think there's any reason why he can't continue that form. I'm almost talking myself into we should keep him. But there we go.
Don't do that.
No,
you need to sell him, Simon.
Yes, well, we need to sell someone because we don't have any money. On the side, kind of financial side of things, mate, like where are Derby now? Because obviously you had your issues just before you went down from the Championship. Are things a little bit more settled?
Totally settled, totally sustainable, really good shape. We've had Derby have had 2 years of David Clowes as the owner this summer. He invested 55 million at the start, which paid off debts, etc. They've rebuilt relationships with the whole football pyramid, local business, of course, as well, because of bills that weren't paid. And Derby are on. I mean, they've had 2 years of restrictions in the transfer market, but they're up now. And going forward, the EFL will monitor the budget, but budget plans have to be monitored. I think that's going to come in quite widely in football anyway, especially in the EFL. So Derby are ready to go, but they forked out 350 grand on Corey Blackett-Taylor, who really didn't hit the ground running. He made 12 appearances and 5 starts. And maybe the next season is for him, because it's very difficult for a forward player to come in, I think, if they're injured, which he was when they signed him, to come in and slot in a team that actually works quite well. So that's the only money they've spent in about 3 or 4 years since they bought Kamil Józwiak from the Polish winger. And that was a poor signing because he didn't really do anything. He couldn't really cut it. And that was a lot of money on him. But it's a completely different ball game now. And, the fact that they keep selling out at home means the turnover and the revenue is really significant. And you add to the £7 to £8 million more they'll get in the Championship for TV money because of the 80% split of the Sky deal. The income will be there, the sponsorship will be there, the hospitality will be there. So, they're in a really good place. And next season in the Championship will be one of consolidation, unless you're Ipswich, of course. But it's
been a few
Pardon?
There's been a few clubs recent years who've gone up and then done well. Sunderland have done quite well. Luton, I think, went up, and then I think it took a couple of seasons. But there's been a few teams which have come up from League One into the Championship and then done very well and kind of kept that form. Because I think there's
I'd be happy
for winning.
I'd be happy with fourth from bottom, to be honest. I don't mind.
That's what makes...
I think Derby will be able to attract players who can keep them in the Championship because it is a big club. But Ipswich's success this season, whether they finish second or third, is down to the fact that they were in a very different position than Derby when they went up last season, because they put that side together over 2 previous seasons. Which is why they've kept it together and done well this season. And good luck to them. But the thing is, right, and we've talked about this before, I think people at Derby are just happy that they've got a football club, because it was like a week away from going bust and finished. You can't imagine that.
Being there, my friend, and it's not nice.
It's not nice.
And I think, do you know what? Like, I've thought a couple of times, like since we spoke in January, and I've sort of been flicking through the results, and I've seen Derby have won or whatever, and I've thought, good for Ed, because I know what it's like to just be like every week, just everything seems to be going wrong, whether it's off the pitch, on the pitch, and it could be very demoralising as fans. And I think, from what I gathered, like generally speaking, like Derby fans have kind of stuck with the team, and I think the attendance has been really good all year, haven't they?
They have, yeah. I mean, they've had anything from 25,000 up. There was 32,000 there on Saturday against Carlisle. There was 32,000 against Bolton, Blackpool on Good Friday. They're just turning out. I think they've sold like 20,000 season tickets already for next season, and that's with the price increase. So I think administration has also led to the fact that Derby have got a lot of new fans as well, because all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean? What is this football club? And it's for a one-team city, it's like just completely pulled everybody together, because it is the biggest thing in the city of Derby. I know we've got a huge history in train making, and we've got a huge history in building aircraft engines at Rolls-Royce. That's where the engines are made. And to not have a football club is totally ridiculous. But they have got one, and that drives everything forward.
Indeed, mate, and they've recovered well. One thing I did want to ask you about is it's off topic, mind, and this has got nothing to really do with Cardiff or Derby, but it's something which I had a discussion with Rhodri a few times on our show. So when Wayne Rooney was your manager in the Championship, I kind of went against the grain a little bit, and I said, look, I think he's doing a pretty good job considering, points deductions and restrictions, and he can't bring people in and blah, blah, blah. And I said, if he keeps them up, which at one point it looked like he might do, I was like, that's going to be one of the best jobs that anyone's ever done. And unfortunately for you guys and for him, it didn't quite come off. But then interestingly, I do not know what Birmingham were doing this year when they got rid of, I forgot his name. Was it Eustace? Yeah. They were in the playoff positions, doing really well, playing great football, young side, and like everything was going in the right direction. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, it's like, we sacked the manager and Wayne Rooney's coming in, and it just went badly, let's say. Do you?
Birmingham have a history of that, though, don't they? Yeah. They did that with Gary Rowett. They're in a similar position. They had a new ownership group. Gary who? Oh, no, we don't want him. Gianfranco Zola, I know that name. Let's get him in. He was awful. And they've done the same with John Eustace. I know John personally, and he's a very intelligent man. He's a good coach. And he's, for his sake, I think he's going to keep Blackburn up. But Wayne Rooney's appointment at Birmingham was, it's a Hollywood signing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just weird. I would have understood it if they had, because look, new owners always want, one, they want new shiny things, and two, they want their guy. And I think you can look across the Premier League now that there's certain jobs which are probably going to go regardless of what happens. Whereas it was just they weren't just in the sort of top 6, top 7. They were playing really good football, and they've also got some great young players, including Jordan James in the midfield, who, in fairness to Rooney, Jordan James, before Rooney came in, Jordan James wasn't playing, and Cardiff was sniffing about him. And I was very vocal at the time, and I said, if there is any opportunity to get him, especially because he's not playing, you need to do it now, because it won't be long before he's playing week in, week out, and he's doing exceptionally well. And Rooney came in, and straight away from the first game he was starting, and I think he's started every game since. So part of me, the kind of, because I never want clubs necessarily to get relegated, because I know what it's like as a fan and the rest of it. And I have got some Birmingham City fans who are friends, but part of me wants Birmingham to go down to see if Cardiff will sniff about him again. But go on. I
was just saying, I think when you treat managers with such contempt, as they did with John Eustace, as they did with Birmingham, with Gary Rowett, although Gary was a different ownership group, you kind of reap what you sow, don't you? So if they end up getting relegated, it's kind of, well, what do you expect? You're in the playoffs, and the Birmingham fans know that, and they all went very, as you say, big and shiny when the chap from America came in, the famous NFL star, is it Tom Brady? Is it NFL?
Yeah, I think it's him. Yeah, I
know Tom Brady came in. It was like, Hollywood. That was a Hollywood signing. Wayne Rooney was at DC United until he got, he left his job there. So it's odd. And if they go down, they might struggle to get back up. Really, really struggle. But you were going to ask me a question about Wayne Rooney. Go on.
So I just thought, because people have been very critical of him because of that Birmingham job, and I think in some ways I think it was very difficult for him because the fans never took to him. The fans never, from day one, there was a big portion of that fan base who didn't want him there, were not happy that he had come in, and they never got behind him. So it was, I think, when you haven't got the fans on side to start with, it's always an uphill battle. I think there was rumours of some of the players being not happy as well, which you'd expect, because I'm sure that at least some of them would have liked John Eustace. So there's going to be that side of it as well. I just wondered what you thought of him as a manager, because obviously he was with Derby for a bit. And yeah,
I thought he was brilliant for Derby. I got on with him really well. He was humble. He was quite normal, which is, it's weird because I've worked with Frank Lampard and Wayne Rooney, and Frank had an entourage, very pleasant. Really talked about the game well. Never really lost his rag when they lost, which obviously they didn't that often that season. Rooney was up against it. He was the voice piece for the club, because at that point, the owner was trying to sell. Then he went into administration, and Rooney was left with basically, he was the mouthpiece. The administrators would barely talk, and he galvanised everybody. He got them all together and sort of dragged the football team and the club and the city forward, because somebody had to. It could have all gone to pot very, very early. It was points deductions for administration, and then 9 points for the charges for what's it called? Financial fair play. And it was really against them. And they spent the rest of the season in the bottom three, but they were in a false position. So they won games. But Rooney was very humble. He would talk about messages he wanted to get out there, because no one else would listen. So he was using us as a mouthpiece as well. And I've got no complaints about him at all. I thought he was brilliant for Derby. He was very pleasant to work with. It's a shame it's not quite worked out in his appointments at DC and at Birmingham. But Birmingham, as you say, he was never going to work there, because John Eustace was doing such a great job, and then he's gone, and then why change? But I'm sure at some point he'll dip back into management, probably lower down. It's not a place for him. Premier League, Championship. He needs to go and start organically growing a football club, I think. And there's plenty in the Northwest to do so. So I wish him all the best.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you could see him go into a team in the Northwest, lower down, and really building something special. I do wonder. I saw that he signed to be a co-presenter on the Overlap today. And do you know what? The first thing I thought was, he'll be Salford City manager before the end of next season, because they're not afraid to sack managers. And then I thought, actually, I could see that working, because they will give him time that they won't give to other managers, because of their personal relationship. And I think it's the same anywhere. Like, so for instance, taking it back to Cardiff, there's been a lot of fans, or a portion of fans in the Cardiff fan base, who are not happy with Bullet at the moment because of the style of football. I argue that at the start of the season it was fine. It kind of fell off a cliff in the middle, and then there's been different games, but he needs players, and the players he's got are not the players he wants. So it's very difficult to implement fully what you want to do. You're kind of doing a little bit of what you want to do, but then you're having to, adjust and do things. But I said at the start of the season, you've got to give him this year to be away from relegation, which he's done. Next year to be sort of top 8, pushing for the playoffs in the last couple of games. If he gets there, he gets there. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And then the third season is where you judge him and you say, right, we expect you to reach the playoffs minimum this year, because you've had 3 seasons to build your side. Obviously, assuming that each January and summer, the club back him as best they can. And I think that's the only way you can build anything as a manager. Anything, any club, whether it's, Manchester United in the Premier League, Cardiff in the Championship, Derby this year, whoever, Salford. Like, if you're not going to give a manager 2-3 seasons, it's pointless. Because ultimately, if you don't give them that time, they're never going to be playing with their squad. I saw a stat the other day that Jurgen Klopp played the other week, or this season, and it was the first time in his 7 or 8 years that he's had a full squad of players that are all his signings or he's brought in from the academy. So if you think that's taken 8 years to completely get rid of past regimes players, I think that shows what a big job it is to rebuild a football club. And Cardiff have had to rebuild. Like, we've got, and we still have, and we've had so many players that are either maybe not good enough for what we're trying to do. Maybe there's also players who don't want to be there, which have caused a few discussions this season in terms of the changing room and stuff like that, because they want to play, they're not in the squad. We've all been in changing rooms. We know, people get frustrated if they're not playing. And I think that it all plays into it. And until you can allow a manager to be able to at least field 12 or 14 of his own players, you're asking him to perform, not miracles, but it's an uphill battle, mate. I really believe that.
Which is why Derby's promotion from League One is astonishing, considering that squad has been put together without spending any money, really. And a lot of the signings were made by Liam Rossini at the start of last season. So, although
were they all frees and loans, mate, last year?
Frees and loans, yeah. And a lot of the signings, that he's made this year have had injuries. A lot of them have been injured for large parts of the season. Connor Washington, who's a seasoned pro, Martin Waghorn, who's coming towards the end of his career. Corey Blackett-Taylor arrived in January and was injured. Ryan Nyambi, who I think you'll know, was he at Cardiff? Have I made that up?
I don't think. No, I don't think.
Well,
so.
Anyway, Ryan Nyambi's 26. He's got himself injured, but he was really good as well. Curtis Nelson, what a player he is! Curtis Nelson won Player of the Season. He's played every single game, and he's played every single minute of every game that he's played in. Absolutely brilliant.
I thought he was all right when he was down here, to be honest. Some people didn't, but I thought he was pretty good. Like, you could see defensively, I think he's really solid. I think if you want to, maybe, if you're looking to play possession football or something like what we're doing now, maybe you don't, you've got to look to a different style of centre back. But I think you need and this is the other thing, you need a mix of players, even if you're going to play possession football, or you're going to play high pressing football, or you're going to play counter attacking football. You still need a mix of players, because undoubtedly, as you go through the championship season, particularly, you will come across games where your plan A, doesn't work, and you need a plan B. So you need a range of players. You need a different styles of players, and I think both Cardiff and Derby will be really interesting to see what they do this summer, because it sounds like Derby very similar to Cardiff last summer. So on that point of frees and loans, Cardiff last summer still had an embargo, so we literally had free transfers or loans. And unfortunately, however you frame it, quite often free transfers are players who have been released or aren't wanted by their parent club. Loan players are either young players who need football, or they're players who aren't wanted by their parent club for a variety of reasons. But what you can expect from free transfers and loans, I think, is inconsistency. So you might get a couple of really good games, but you might also get a couple of poor games. And I think that was something which was lost on some Cardiff fans this year, is that our squad is built of players who have previously probably not failed, but haven't quite hit the heights, and then frees and loans, and you're just not going to get that consistency with some young players as well.
Derby signed Elliot Embleton on loan back in August before the deadline from Sunderland, and he played 53 minutes and got injured, and never seen him again. Tyrese John Jules played 12 games, started twice, got injured. He's back in training now, but of course it's too late. Tyrese Forner, he arrived, 9 starts, lost his way, mentally, I think, during the season, had a bit of a wobble, being away from where he's used to. So that loan didn't work. He wasn't on loan, actually. He signed a deal, but, the greatest loan signing has got to be Ebou Adams to bring it all round in a circle. He's had the most impact of a player on loan I can think of for a very long time. Very long time. Dwight Gale, of course. You should remember Dwight Gale because I mean he played 6 games, started 5, scored 3 goals, which were winning goals. So he got us 9. He got Derby 9 points. And I said to him on Saturday, I said I just explained to him, you played a massive part in this, despite getting injured and only starting 5 games, because the 3 goals you scored, 9 points were collected. So make sure you remember that, because I know it's probably a bit weird, but make sure you remember that.
100%, mate. Like, then again, sort of just comparing it to Cardiff. Cardiff haven't had number 9 all season, so we've it almost makes what he's achieved in getting to 8th or 9th, no relegation worries. Like, it makes it incredible in some ways, because we've literally had no striker. We've been playing wingers through the middle, and it can be frustrating, mate, sometimes, that people are so impatient, for me at least. But one player I did want to ask you about, who's obviously got Cardiff links as well. You've got a few in your squad, haven't you? Nathaniel Mendez-Laing. When he was at Cardiff, he had a season or two where he was electric. And I saw a clip of him the other day. Like, he's so pacey, direct, attacking. Had a few off the field issues, and I know he's still really popular in the city. Gone to Derby to sort of rebuild things, and from what I gather, he's done all right, isn't he?
He's very unlucky not to get player of the season, actually, because he's been brilliant. 49 games, 47 games, 46 starts. He's played 90 minutes 42 times this season. 10 goals, 15 assists. He's top of the assists
massive
table. But he is definitely a footballer, and we see this in young footballers who lose their way off the field. And we know what happened to Nathaniel when he was at Cardiff, and he got the boot, and he had to rebuild himself, and that could have gone 2 ways for him. He could have ducked out of football altogether or come back stronger. And obviously he spent time at Middlesbrough and at Sheffield Wednesday, and then Derby picked him up. And he's got his feet under the table, and he's playing a Paul Warne style of football. But he's played a lot through the middle, actually, when James Collins was injured. But he's just so dangerous. He scored the winner at Cambridge last weekend, which got Derby basically more or less promoted. But I spoke to his wife on Saturday, and we had a little chat, because they live where I used to live, where my kids live, in Sutton Coldfield. And we talked about him and the fact that he just seems settled. He's grown up, he's settled, he's got his feet under the table. Family life is good. He's 40 minutes down the road from Derby, and it all gets to you that stage, isn't it? When your kind of family life is all sorted, your productive life excels. Well, hopefully for most people, but we go through the squad, and it'll be interesting to see Derby's retain list next week. But he signed a new deal, so there's not a problem with that. But he's one of those players who can step up and do it in the Championship, because we've seen him do it before. James Collins, of course, is the other Cardiff link, isn't he? And he's Derby's top scorer, 19 goals this season. And he was in the teens last season as well. He's combative, as you know. My mum calls him the angry man, because he runs around so aggressively focused on his game of football. But he's done really well. I mean, he's had injuries. He missed quite a few games recently. He got injured innocuously off the ball at Exeter when he was on goal number 18. And then he made a lot of progress on his own, getting himself fit. So he was part of it towards the end of the season. That's the reason Dwight Gale came in, actually, because we didn't think we'd see him again. But he came back and he scored the second goal on Saturday. And, it'll be interesting to see the retained list. I think he's got another year on his deal. But yeah, I mean, Paul Warne said post-match on Saturday he's going to have to rip up the squad and start again, which is understandable, really, considering.
Yeah, you've got to take each season as a separate entity almost, haven't you? Yes, you want continuity in certain aspects, but it's a different challenge each year, isn't it? And just on Mendez-Laing, like, I got to say, I'm delighted for it, because as someone who's had problems before themselves, particularly when I was younger, like it's not always easy to bounce back and get out of those sort of those issues, and like those issues as well. Like it's very difficult to focus on what your productive life is or your day job if things aren't settled away from it and you're worried or you're nervous or whatever it may be. And to see him back, and we so often see athletes once they get off the field issues, they find it very difficult to turn it around. And I think I've been really, really happy to see that I've only spoken to him once, just in passing, but he seemed like a genuinely nice guy. And then I've been really thrilled to not just, because it obviously didn't work out. When he went to Borough, I thought it might work out well for him. It didn't quite work out for him there. But then it just seems like sometimes, mate, it's just the right city or the right club at the right time, and it's massive. And I think
totally agree.
That's I'm really, really happy for him, mate. But what I'm even more happy about is that hopefully next year I'll get to see you in person.
It's been a while.
It's going to be
Can't go to the Radar Arms though, because that's gone.
You make me cry. We'll find another pub, but it'll be good to catch up in person, my friend. How much would you pay for Ebou Adams if you were Derby? It's so hard to predict, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, 250, maybe appearances, and then if he does anything and goes higher,
I think
deal to be done.
Yeah,
I mean, he's 28, so where can he go from there? His career is, he's 28 years of age. He's a Gambian international, so he's at peak age. So he really needs to not be on the bench at Cardiff. He needs to be starting every week at Derby. Just saying.
Yeah, I agree, mate. No, I agree. He needs to be starting.
Or anyway, he needs to be playing.
Ultimately, mate, if he was to be at Cardiff, he won't start. And I'm not even 100% sure he'd be on the bench because we've got some exceptional youngsters in those sort of central areas. And I also think the manager's going to try and bring in one central midfielder, which is going to put him even further down the pecking order. So it makes a lot of sense. I think Cardiff will ask for about 500 grand. I do. So I think they'll probably meet in the middle somewhere along there. But I think it's easy enough to meet in the middle, really, though, isn't it? Like you said there, you just put some bonuses in, like appearances, and away you go. Like, I'd like to think that Cardiff won't get completely screwed over in it, but we are so bad, mate, at deal. I'm half expecting us to announce that we've sold Perry NG for 500 grand in a couple of weeks, just because we're just notoriously bad, mate. So it's, unfortunately, I think Perry's going to go. It's one of them things. But I also think he's, alongside Walker Peters, the best right back in the Championship. So he deserves. He's at the perfect age and profile to maybe make that step up to the Premier League, and I think he deserves that opportunity. At the end of the day, mate, he's been super consistent and very, very good, and you can't deny players the opportunity if the big moves come along. Interestingly, mate, which is not Derby related, but kind of wanted your take on it. Just thought of it. So we've got a young lad, Isaac Davis. I think he's 21, maybe 22, who's been on loan at Belgian second division side this year. I think he scored 14 goals. Done very, very well in a team which has not been great, but he has done individually very well. Been linked with Monaco and Anderlecht. Now, do you think that a young player like that, I think he's going to come in, and I don't think there's a guarantee that he's going to come back and be our centre forward or our winger, because I think the manager's going to want to sign at least one number 9, probably 2. So there's no guarantees at Cardiff first team football. Do you think at that, even though he's young, players have to snap up opportunities when they're offered to them, like a Monaco, who are both teams, Monaco and Anderlecht, are generally in the Champions League, fairly semi-regularly, and you never know if those opportunities will come back if you turn them down.
Championship is a hell of a division as a 21-year-old striker to try and make an impact in, isn't it?
Oh,
and Belgian second division is, not the same.
Disco
seem to be flickering.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if Monaco come sniffing and they want to pay money, that's again where you put the deal in, isn't it? You put the deal in place. Is he Welsh?
Yeah.
So he could play for Wales one day. So you put clauses in to see if that move can elevate him to a standard where he can be an international. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? But as I say, the Championship is not like any other division, is it? Really, it's kind of, it takes the brute force of League One and the technical skill and pace of the Premier League and pushes it all into one 24 club league. And I'm not sure League Un or the top division in Belgium are as consistent and as good as the Championship, would you say? And
No,
I know that you
I agree, man.
League, but I can't remember the last time Monaco were in Europe. And Anderlecht, they don't get very far. It's historically,
yeah.
So maybe it is a good move for him, or maybe the scouts at Cardiff think, he's done well. We'll give him a go as a squad player.
Yeah, and I think there's something there with him. I just think we've got Kean Ashford, who's played the last couple of games of the season on the right. He's going to be a first-team player next year, without a doubt. Been very, very good. Scored the winner the other day. Has impressed with the time he's been given after waiting patiently all season. Then you've got Colwell Jr., who's a sort of number 8 central aggressive midfielder. That's the exact position we need. And I think if he can bulk out a little bit over the summer, he'll probably play as well. So it's not that this manager, I think, would give him a chance. But having just done a season with no number 9, I struggle to see him playing through the middle. And then I look at the wings and I'm like, wait, I don't know if he's going to play there either. And look, of course, it's up to him to force his way into the squad and make himself undeniable. But equally, like you mentioned, I think the Championship is probably in the top 6 leagues in Europe. I think it's above some of the top leagues elsewhere. But the standard is so high, mate. And like we said off air, and this is a nice way to sort of wrap everything in a big bow. We said off air just before we started, like I said, or I said that I was really happy for you, having watched through the season, looked at the results, saw your little clip of you commentating on you guys going up in the weekend and you being emotional, like, and that made me feel great, because I also realized that if you didn't go up this year, it was going to be harder next year. Yeah. And this is the issue, is in the Championship, every year it gets harder. But in League One, it's the same. Every year it gets harder. Yeah. Next year you could end up with like flipping Birmingham, Huddersfield, and Rotherham coming down. All right, maybe with the exception of Rotherham, but Birmingham and Blackburn are massive clubs. They'll certainly have a bit of cash to spend.
Yeah,
and they've already got some good players.
Look who's coming up from League Two. Stockport, who are a big club in that area at that level, and Wrexham, who we know about Wrexham. That's a story and a half. Brilliant story. Mansfield as well will have a crack, but there's another team to come up as well out of the playoffs. So it's going to be a very competitive league. And we said last season that Plymouth and Ipswich are established in League One. They're ready to go. And the third team, I can't remember even who went up now, and the third team that went up last season, but
might have been Rotherham, was it?
We knew that this. No, Rotherham, it wasn't Rotherham.
Rotherham.
Paul Warne took Rotherham up, and they stayed up, and then they went down this season. But it was Sheffield Wednesday. So those 3 teams, Sheffield Wednesday, Plymouth, Ipswich, all big teams out of the way. And if Derby didn't do it this year, when the league is weaker, then they would have had a problem the season after. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting, mate. Yeah, you did. Congratulations, mate. Again, I'm very happy for you personally, and like I said, I'm very excited about seeing you when you come down.
Give me a pint of brains, SA, yeah.
Absolutely, mate. Definitely be doing that, and hopefully, me and you should lead the negotiations for Ebou Adams, and then they'll probably run a lot smoother. But
I think so. I'm happy to do that for them.
Yes, indeed, mate. Look, appreciate your time, mate, as always, and I'm sure we might have a little chat over the summer when things are flying about the place. Like to speak to different journalists and stuff, to talk about football, and obviously got the Euros and things like that. So I'm sure we'll catch up again. But appreciate your time, mate. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No. And I bet you're pleased that you can now go more than 20 miles an hour in a built-up area. Yes.
It's everywhere in Cardiff, 20 mile an hour. Everywhere. Just everywhere. And I'm fed up with it.
Not for long.
Nice. Mate, I drove up to Harrogate the other day, and it was so nice to be in a place where I just wasn't 20 everywhere. But there was one point I was driving through Leeds, sort of the outskirts, coming out of Leeds city centre, and it was like my missus said, "You're going a bit slow," and I was like, I was going 20, and it was like 30, and I was like, oh, bloody Cardiff, that is.
Leeds is a nightmare to get around. Absolute nightmare.
I discovered that there was like the longest part of my journey from Cardiff to Harrogate was going through Leeds city centre on a Friday evening. Oh, flashbacks. Right, appreciate you, mate. Thank you very much.
Right, mate.
I'll speak to you soon. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. See you.